It is the morning sports desk for Tuesday, March 19th. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Corey Tackman. Corey, happy Free Cone Day.
What?
It's first day of spring. Free cone at Dairy Queen.
What?
Yeah, it's Free Cone Day.
Okay, I'll go get one.
Yeah, I mean, I really need to twist your arm on that.
Count me in.
I didn't see. Here's the thing. Like, somebody pointed this out to me that's always been a thing, and I had absolutely no idea that it had been. So the fact now that I'm privy to this, so every single year I'm just looking around for an opportunity to find a Free Cone Day. That's because the first day of spring doesn't really mean anything in Minnesota, but the free cone definitely does.
Yeah, I think the kind of people who know about that kind of stuff live in a world of anxiety and pressure and stress to which I don't live. I live much more in the present, which means I forget about and or miss. Like I didn't know it was St. Patrick's Day until I woke up that morning and someone's like, "Happy St. Patrick's Day." So, you miss out on a few things along the way, but the blissful ignorance that you can walk through life when you aren't worried about what's happening in the future, even on silly things like Free Cone Day and the first day of spring. What great news to find out today. But, I didn't have it on my calendar. I wasn't making plans around this.
No, I wasn't either. But the fact of it was pointed out to me on social media, and then I made it a plan. Because I don't know if you know this, Corey, people in radio don't necessarily make the big bucks. So anytime there's a free anything, I'm on board. And I made certainly less money at my first job out of college. And a lot of that was doing news stories at restaurants. And anytime they offered free food, we in fact would bait them into giving us free food. We're like, we need B-roll of you making food, for the news story. Can we get some shots of that? And they'd make the food. And then, you'd sit there and be like, oh man, that looks pretty good. And they go, oh, do you want this? Oh yeah. You know what? I didn't even think of that, but yes, I will take this burger basket. Thank you. Except for one time our camera guy said that he was like, yeah, it looks pretty good. And the guy's like, yeah, he's like, I should give this to my employees for working so hard. He's like, no, give it to me. Like,
dang it.
Darn it. Don't think of your employees. Think of the random guy videotaping your workplace.
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but we have something coming up in the Superstation very soon. And I had to tell somebody in our sales department, like, this is over lunch. Make sure we're getting lunch out of this thing. And he just laughed at me. I was like, I'm not joking. Get us some lunch. This needs to be a part of it.
Come on.
Please.
Free food is the best food. That's always how it tastes. Anyway, so onto the sports scene. Anthony Edwards, my goodness. He scored 32 points in a win and took the NBA world over last night. There was a dunk with the Lakers-Hawks game where Austin Reeves, let's just say, was trying to defend a dunk, and the guy jumped up so high. His head was at belt level, and they did not have much separation. Let's just put it that way.
No.
But that wasn't even the dunk that took over the night. It was Anthony Edwards jumping from about halfway through the lane on top of John Collins, slamming it home. John Collins had to leave the game. He did not come back. Anthony Edwards left the game for a whole minute because he dislocated his finger on the dunk. And after the game, there's video of Anthony Edwards watching the replay for the first time. And he just looked and was like, that has to be the best dunk of my career. And he's like, I couldn't even celebrate it because I dislocated my finger. Like, that's all he was talking about. Corey, when did you first see video of Anthony Edwards' dunk, and what was your reaction?
I saw it in an expletive-filled text message from a college roommate that said something to the effect of, beep, 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 beep. You need to watch this.
Right.
My favorite part is somebody asked Ant for his jersey after the game, and he goes, nah, I got to give it to Collins.
Well, and that's the interesting part, because some people think he's talking about John Collins, and some people think he's talking about Colin Sexton, because he was friends with him in Georgia. Like,
No, I think
like
he
in
said
high school.
Collins.
I think he
with an
did too,
S
but
at the end. Yes.
I think he did too. That guy is Ant is just, he's a straight BSer. It's what makes him so charming. It's what makes him the way he is. When you have Dwayne Wade just commenting on your dunk with all caps saying him, you know you're doing something well. And when you have Kevin Garnett going back on Twitter to remind everybody his take that Anthony Edwards is 88 MJ or 87 MJ or whatever it was, you feel pretty darn good about all of that. So the first time I saw the dunk, I was watching the game. I was on the couch. I was watching it, and I looked down at my phone to check Twitter for all of 2 seconds before I hear Michael Grady, the Wolves play-by-play announcer, absolutely lose his mind. And I didn't even need to look up. I knew, like, dang it, Anthony Edwards did something really cool. And he did. I think the only dunk that comes close is maybe the one that didn't count against Miami a couple years ago, where it kind of was like an Austin Reeves against Atlanta situation against Miami. And that was like the first kind of game where people realized, like, oh, like 2 years ago, like, oh, these Wolves can be pretty good, actually. Like, they got something here.
Is that the one that he missed, or they called an offensive foul?
They called an offensive foul on it.
Yeah, it was a joke.
That was a joke.
There's technologically better ways to show this to you than the way I'm going to show it to you. But here's the picture that was going around.
Uh-huh.
Let's see if I can. There you go. You can kind of see it there. I'm trying to get that reflection out. But then these are my favorite. Here's Monte Morris reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Slow-mo.
Kyle Anderson had the best one. Because, like, you could, if you watch the video replay, you can see him just go. Like,
here's this guy in the background.
Just loving life.
And then let's see. Do I have one more? Oh, and then, of course, that guy's dead now.
He left the game. He's not been heard of again. He did not have a concussion. He got a head contusion. But everybody's like, and literally send that man to the hospital. Like, it's got to be the greatest dunk of the year. It's got to be the greatest dunk in a long time. And it's there's a bunch of people who said, like, this proves that Anthony Edwards needs to be in the dunk contest. And to which Anthony Edwards goes, honestly, he's like, I don't do well in a dunk contest setting. He's like, I do well in he didn't say it about yesterday, but he said a long time ago, he's like, I do well in settings like that, where I get a head of steam and I go through the lane and I'm in game mode. Like, it's not it's not doing it off a car. It's not throwing off like, he's a guy that just wants to do it in the flow of a game because he lives for moments like that. That is he knew exactly what he was doing. And Anthony Edwards has this bizarre way. He dislocated his finger. He walked off the floor. And if Anthony Edwards didn't come back and make that and go shoot his free throw, because it was a foul on Collins on a body to add insult to injury. If Edwards didn't go shoot that free throw, he would have had to miss the rest of the game, according to the NBA rules. So Finch had to call a timeout and, like, give them extra time and let him tape up the finger. And he came back and made the free throw. And then the next offensive possession, ripped through the lane, didn't dunk it, but ripped through the lane for a layup on the right side. And there's 50 times this year, it feels like, where Anthony Edwards has gotten banged up in a game. He fell too hard. He hit his hand on something, whatever. And it's the meme of the guy going, call an ambulance. And then he pulls out a switchblade or a pistol and goes, but not for me. And that's Anthony Edwards every single time that he gets hurt in the game. And again, we always know Anthony Edwards is capable of performances like this. It's the consistency of it. And we're not seeing it happen every single night, but we're seeing more of it. That was a game the Minnesota Timberwolves absolutely needed to win. They have a back-to-back. I think they go back to the Target Center tonight, and they play the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets lost in pretty heartbreaking fashion to the Mavs, so they're going to be pretty motivated, especially playing the Timberwolves. Timberwolves on the second night of a back-to-back. They were in LA all last week. This is their first time actually getting back to Minneapolis in like 10 days. So winning that game in Utah was important, especially because Naz Reid put up like 17 points in the first half and then got a concussion and had to leave. So he's probably not playing tonight. So you needed to win this game. And Anthony Edwards didn't have a great first half, but turned it on in that second half. And that's the kind of thing. The Wolves did not have Gobert. They did not have Cat. They did not have Naz. They had all of their size gone. And yet Anthony, and I know Utah's not great, but they can beat you if you're not playing your best basketball. And Anthony Edwards put the team on his back and won. And that's exactly what they needed out of him.
They're outside of Timberwolves fans, like you mentioned, there's no one happier than Austin Reeves that dunk happened, because as you mentioned, Austin Reeves had a Jimmy Dean sausage for breakfast that morning, and he is so happy that this ended up going viral, because I saw the dunk on Austin Reeves, and that was considerably more embarrassing.
He was British the way that put out, with the way that they like to consume their hot drinks of tea.
Hello, governor.
Of tea in bag form, I guess would be the way to say it. But they asked
Reeves. There was a clip. Did you see the clip afterwards? And he's like, "I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't ask about it." And he goes, "What do you need to know?"
He's like, "What do you need to know?" He's like, "What was it from your angle?" He's like, "Not good."
Awesome. I'm so happy Anthony Edwards plays for my favorite team.
All the time I just have to realize how lucky the Wolves got in that draft. That was not a slam dunk draft in 2020. The Wolves just took Ant because he had upside and talent. And there was a real risk that was never, could you imagine if the Wolves, let's say they didn't even take LaMelo Ball. Let's say they took James Wiseman, who's a bust, like a straight up, would have set the Timberwolves back even further, kind of bust. He's on his fourth team in 5 seasons. Was picked by the Warriors 3rd overall. Could you imagine if Ant actually ended up going to the Warriors? Could you imagine that? If Anthony Edwards got thrown in with Clay and Steph and Draymond on that team, they'd the Warriors are still playoff teams. They won a finals a couple of years ago, but they'd still be in the peak of their finals prime. That's how things would be if Anthony Edwards got drafted by Golden State. If he got drafted in Charlotte, I'll be honest, I don't know how that would have turned out, because Charlotte seems like their basketball team seems like a very unserious franchise. And that's coming from somebody who's seen 2 decades of Timberwolves basketball. But I just thank your lucky stars every day that Anthony Edwards is a Minnesota Timberwolf.
That draft was a COVID draft, and people in the NBA talk about it all the time. There were just some things that get missed because a lot of in-person events, as we all know, were not able to happen. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out anyway, and what everybody thought about that draft was there were a lot of mid-floor, mid-ceiling guys, and there weren't a lot of high-floor guys. Right. Ant was the only one really who had Ant.
There's a lot of boomer busts.
There was a lot of high ceilings, but there was no. If there would have been a high floor could be a starter in this league for a really long time kind of guy in that draft at who we would have thought of at that time as that sort of player, that person probably goes number 1 overall. But because there wasn't, it was just let's go take this freak athlete and see what we can turn him into. And turns out they didn't have to do anything. He turned himself into whatever he wanted to be.
Thank goodness for Steve Kerr calling him out in a pre-draft workout. That legit motivated him. And especially not getting picked by the Warriors. He got picked number 1 overall, but Anthony Edwards has got it. I don't know what it is. He's a good player. He's charismatic. He's whatever. And the Wolves I don't know what's going to happen. It's, the Wolves, are they going to finish with the 1 seed being banged up the way they are? Are they going to finish 3? I don't know, but the Wolves in the playoffs are going to be a team to beat, because Anthony Edwards will find another level come postseason time, and that's going to be the fun part as well. So we'll see how the game against Denver goes tonight, because there's a good chance, Corey, that Luka Garza is going to be matched up on Jokic all night. So that will not go well.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You won the Jazz game. That was the one you needed to win. Even a fully healthy Wolves team, it's not a guarantee you're going to beat Denver. So whatever, you move on. The Wolves schedule, Denver appears one more time. Their schedule isn't very tough. They have playoff teams here and there. They have some games that they need to win. But overall, the Wolves have a good schedule to kind of help limp to the playoffs a little bit. When you look at their next games, they play the Nuggets tonight, and then they host Cleveland on Friday, and on Sunday they host the Warriors, and then it's Pistons at Nuggets versus Bulls, Rockets, Raptors at Suns at Lakers versus Wizards at Nuggets versus Hawks versus Suns, and then we're into the postseason. So here we go. It's not too far away. If I do the quick math in my head, there's it's
14 games, 15 games, something like that.
Somewhere in there. So here we go. It's coming down to the wire, and we'll see what happens with the Wolves. Before we get into college basketball, there's just a quick Twins thing I want to bring up. Corey, it's been a pretty quiet spring training for the Twins, and no news is good news, whether it's NFL training camp, NBA or NHL training camp, or MLB spring training. Like, the more uneventful it is, the better. And the Twins had a pretty quiet one. Like, everything had just been putting along. They've been getting ready for the regular season. The biggest storylines were the fact of that Buxton was playing center field and running around. Like, did you see him go from score from first base on that double by Lewis? Like, he's chugging along. He was making diving plays in the outfield. And then Derek Falvey yesterday on the radio and TV broadcast of the Twins spring training game yesterday afternoon made some comments that now all of a sudden have Twins fans in a little bit of a tizzy, if you will, because there's going to be some injuries on the pitching side of things. So this is according to The Athletic. 3 of the 13 pitchers projected to be on the opening day roster, closer Yohan Duran, setup man Caleb Thielbar, and the team's 5th starter, Anthony DeSclafani, will begin the season on the injured list. The Twins did not give return timetables for any of the 3 players. DeSclafani is scheduled to undergo further testing by a specialist. DeSclafani is the one that's probably most in danger of missing a significant amount of time. Duran has never been on the IL before in his major league career. He has a moderate oblique strain, which isn't an arm issue or a shoulder issue. Thank goodness. It's just a little bit on the ribs. So, and Thielbar suffered a strained left hamstring early in camp and just hadn't been quite progressing the way things are. On top of that, Byron Buxton just was scratched from yesterday's game due to, they said, back soreness. That one, again, might just be like, my back feels a little sore. And they're like, you know what? We don't need to push it, kind of a deal. The big thing has been with the pitchers. But, Corey, the Twins kind of the Twins haven't had a great bullpen last year until the end. And that was really only because the ceiling of their bullpen was so high. The Twins got on the back half of their bullpen were really rough outside of Duran, Thielbar, Jax last season. And now you're not going to have 2 of those guys to start the season. What's your kind of gut reaction?
Well, you try not to read too much into any spring training stuff, performance notes and things like that. It is literally about getting ready. You don't win any awards for being ready on March 19th. That's just not how it works. Mm-hmm. But what's also true is the Twins are just absolutely not hitting the ball. Every single morning, the sports report is like, the Twins had 4 hits and lost 5-1. And it's not a full roster. I promise you, I'm not reading too much into this. But what I am saying is if that's a thing that they're going to need a closer to close out close games. And if you're not going to hit the ball and score a lot of runs, all of a sudden that closer becomes even more important. And he was one of, if not the best closer in the game a year ago. So that's just a problem. He's one of the best relief pitchers in the game. That's just turns out to not have that guy in your roster is an issue. Generally speaking, whatever's better to be hurt now than it is in August and September. So I don't know. I don't really know what an oblique is. I know you mentioned where it was, but a core right. Muscle.
It's a core muscle.
A pitcher is important.
It doesn't have the volatility though that like an elbow injury does.
No, but it does have the potential to linger because of the way they use their body.
Yes. So, yes. 100%.
Generally speaking, not worried. That's talk to me. May
in like
1st,
a month. Yeah.
May 1st when things are still not progressing the way they need to be and we can have another conversation. But pitching, I think just in general is kind of the question mark for this roster anyway. So to have this happen doesn't make a fan necessarily feel great.
No. And the other thing, and that's the thing. So it's kind of twofold with this. One, it's just spring training. And it's kind of that point where it's like, okay, I think we need the regular season to start. You know what I mean? I think players are that way where it's like, okay, I've gotten enough at bats. I'm ready to get things going here and where they count and play a full game. It's kind of like an NFL training camp when everybody freaks out about something on August 28th. And it's like, okay, we just need to get to September 12th on opening kickoff. Like, we got to just get to the or like for the Wolves right now, it's like, okay, we just got to get to the playoffs. Like, let's just get this thing moving. And I think that's one of it. So, like, because it's been a quiet spring training, this is the one story that's got some sort of negativity, pessimism, whatever. And some people have latched onto that. The other thing is the Twins payroll situation. No, there's Blake Snell just signed yesterday for like a 2-year deal with opt-outs. Not that much money. His agent, Scott Boras, completely fumbled the bag for a lot of his clients this offseason, and he was one of them. And the Twins, if they had what would have been close to their normal payroll, like the last couple years, would have been able to make Blake Snell a competitive offer, or even go sign Jordan Montgomery, who's still a free agent right now, or even go sign a back-end starter like a Michael Lorenzen. But the Twins are pretty much at their payroll limit, so they can't even go get whatever. And for the Twins pitching, Louis Varland is going to just step in to be the Twins' fifth starter. But so that's not an issue for opening day, but it's what happens when Bailey Ober needs to go on the 10-day IL for soreness or something like that. Who's the next guy you call up? And that's the thing. The Twins last year had Ober and Varland start the season in AAA. So when Maeda and Malley got hurt, those two guys stepped in. And even then, they still needed to have what's his name from last year, Dallas Keuchel, come in and pitch a little bit. And you had unexpectedly healthy seasons from Pablo and from Sonny Gray and whatever. So that's the thing, is the Twins cutting payroll doesn't help the situation because and whatever. I don't think it would have mattered in the grand scheme of things, but there's also this other narrative of the Twins, quote unquote, trading for damaged goods. I see a lot of people putting that out yesterday. Like, I'm so sick and tired of the Twins trading for damaged goods pitching in DeSclafani. Like, DeSclafani was the main piece of the Jorge Polanco trade. He wasn't. What was the main piece was Justin Topa and a prospect who's a top 100 global prospect. That was the trade return. DeSclafani was a throw-in because the Mariners didn't want him. So the Twins were like, sure, we'll take him. We need a fifth starter. That's why they got him. But all pitchers you trade for have arm issues. There's a risk with any pitcher you get that has arm issues. Like, look at the Yankees. They traded for Frankie Montas last year or 2 years ago, the biggest name that they could have traded for, and he pitched like 5 games for him because he got hurt. Do people say the Yankees trade for damaged goods pitching? No, because pitchers are always subject to blowing out their arms. It's not like a thing. It's that looking at a 30,000 foot view of across baseball and saying some of these things have bit the Twins, but they're things that bite every other franchise. I think it's just a few of those things that kind of mash into a story that's definitely not good, but one where it's kind of like can get amplified just because of the kind of the surrounding situations.
I think Yankees fans probably say they only trade for damaged goods,
right?
Pitching, which is an important piece. Like,
their ace Garrett Cole's going to miss a month.
This is just what fans do. So
right.
Like, this is not a Twins wide problem. This is every fan base does this. In regards to DeSclafani, no offense, but like he's a 5 starter. Every team needs a 5 starter. Right. He's like that. The 5th starter on this Twins roster is going to be like 6 different guys by the time the season's over with. It's fine. The 5th starter on the roster is not going to be on a playoff roster if you make the playoffs. They're not ever going to use him.
He won't be starting at least.
Right, exactly. You move him to the bullpen or whatever. It's fine. So in terms of him, I honestly, no offense, dude, I don't care.
I mean,
the other two are a problem. Thielbar ended up being very, very important, and we all know how good Duran was and what he meant to that team, and just the energy that he brings into that stadium is really important. That's a bit of a bigger bummer.
That'll be the thing, and it's why the Twins, they really raised the floor this year of their bullpen. The Twins typically don't get veterans for their bullpen. They typically try and find it internally. They find a guy from the scrap heap, because relievers you don't want to pay a ton of money for, just because you don't want to pay a ton of money for a guy who's going to pitch 40 innings. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something you want to do. This year, though, the Twins, they traded Nick Gordon for Stephen Okert from Miami. They got Justin Topa, who's a high leverage starter. They signed Jay Jackson. They brought in Josh Stamont. They have Griffin Jacks, and Brock Stewart. Those two guys are probably going to fight for the closer role now to start the season. The Twins bullpen does have talent, but the ceiling is lower, but their floor is higher. And we talked about that with the NBA, with the high floor, low floor, high ceiling kind of thing. The Twins bullpen last year was a high floor, was a high ceiling, low floor bullpen. This Twins bullpen without Duran and Thielbar has a lower ceiling, but with all the veterans they added, has a higher floor. This bullpen was still projected, according to Fangraphs, to be one of the most productive bullpens in baseball, which is hard to predict because relievers are like kickers. They're very fluky. But still, this is a bullpen that has talent, and losing the top end stuff will hurt. But also at the same time, it's not like the Twins are now all of a sudden having to put Giovanni Moran or Jorge Alcala on like the 8th inning role. They have guys that can fill in, or at least enough veterans to kind of rotate through that spot. That's not saying they're going to just completely not miss Duran or Thielbar. They will miss those two guys. But it's like you said, it's early in the season, and I'd rather have Duran miss 10 days. If Duran misses the first month of the season but comes back and doesn't miss time for the rest of the year, we're likely not going to notice come July 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, unless they go 0-11 to start the year.
That's the one thing.
And they lose a bunch of high leverage games. They're losing games 5-4, and in the 7th inning they were up 4-3. Stuff. If they're, but that's such a specific instance,
right?
That
and this team is not going to go 0-11. And if they do, then whatever. Like, then here you go. We have a summer.
The team that went 0-11 won the division the year before and the division the year after. So I am not going to tell you they're not going to go 0-11 because I've literally watched this franchise do it. It's really hard. And I'm not in like that doom or gloom. That's not the kind of fan or person I am, but I just, it can happen.
It can happen. So one last thing, and then we'll wrap up the podcast for the day. Corey, we're going to talk NCAA tournament related matters and some of the, let's just say, most unique names in college basketball. Before we do that, why don't we remind everybody about our Basketball Mayhem 2024?
Basketball Mayhem Bracket Challenge is live at WadenaRadio.com. Fill out your brackets and be entered to win a $100 gift card from the Liquor Depot in Staples. Must be 21 plus to get that grand prize. Of course, some bragging rights and just some general BSing on the line. You'll get made fun of on the air if you're not winning, that sort of thing. And if you want a perfect bracket, $1 million. If you fill out a perfect bracket, a chance at $1 million. So shout out to the Liquor Depot and Staples for sponsoring this and making this available. You have until those first games tip off on Thursday to get your brackets filled out. It's called Basketball Mayhem, presented by the Liquor Depot in Staples, and it's available for you to fill out your bracket right now at WadenaRadio.com.
Yeah, the funny thing, I always remind my brother that a couple of years ago, he was in first place heading into the Natty, and he needed Kansas to lose. Kansas won, and he dipped to like 4th and lost any kind of prize, and I'll still remind him of that to this day. He loves it. It's great. He does not love it, but it's great for me. So here we go. Who has the best name in college basketball? And we'll be passive-aggressive Minnesotans. Who has the most unique? Who has the most interesting name in college basketball?
Is this all of college basketball or in the tournament?
College basketball.
Okay.
Here we go.
Do I need to write these down?
If you would like. Okay. Playing at guard, wearing number 5 for the Rhode Island Rams, a 6'3", 175-pound sophomore from Carthage, Missouri. Always right.
I love it. Is right spelled right or with the W?
W.
Always right. Okay, that's a guard. Love it. Next.
Okay. From Georgetown, a senior at 6'9", a nice 229 pounds, from East Orange, New Jersey, a forward wearing number 24, Supreme Cook.
Oh.
Cook is spelled C-O-O-K, no E on that one.
I like that. I like that one. I like the Supreme is obviously unique here, but it's not a perfect match with the last name. Always right.
Mm-hmm. Supreme. If his last name was Court, then we got something here.
Right. Or right. Exactly. Next.
All right. From Utah Tech, the Trailblazers. Wearing number 10, a forward, a freshman from Davenport, Washington, Tennessee Rainwater.
Ooh, I like that one a lot.
And you might think like, oh, is that like a name maybe for like a Native American, somebody who's like, Bemidji State had a guy named Zach Whitecloud who grew up on a reservation in Canada, or had family connections to that. No, this guy looks just white.
He's just a white guy named Tennessee Rainwater.
His last name is Rainwater, and he just name is Tennessee. So
what did they call him? Tennessee? Do they call him
that? All I don't know. Would they call
if somebody's named Tennessee? Would you call him Rocky Top? Like, what would you?
Would you call him like Smoky Mountain Rainwater? Little Ronnie Millsap reference.
The longest nickname ever.
Yeah, but it's not about the length. It's about how cool it sounds.
T-E-double-N-E-double-S-double-E. Tennessee. In case you ever need to remember how to spell it, that little chant will get you through it. Okay, next.
All right, last one. From Cincinnati, the Bearcats. Number 2, a guard, a freshman, 6'1", 195 from Orlando, Florida. Give it up for Jizzle James.
That's it?
His first name is Jizzle.
I don't like it.
That his first name is Jizzle, or you just don't like that his last name was just James?
I had 3 boys.
Yeah.
Jizzle didn't come up in the conversation even once.
I think that means you need to have another kid and name him Jizzle.
I don't think that name. I think I would turn that name down.
Why is that?
Even if it was like a family name, my wife was like, it's a family name. It goes back generations. I would be like, your family's messed up. That is not an okay. That is not an okay. Here, I'll give you a better example. My grandpa, whom I loved, whatever. Just two peas in a pod, my grandpa and me, right?
Mm-hmm.
His first name, Zenos, Zenos.
Interesting.
Bible name. It's somewhere buried in the Bible. But it's a Bible name. I literally never met anyone in my life named Zenos, and we all know why. Because it's got a rhyme scheme that ain't perfect. He said, I remember him saying one time, he's like, I hated my name growing up. And then I realized I was the only, I think he was in college when he finally was like, I'm going to be the only Zenos anyone's ever met ever. And
you kind of can own it a little bit.
You can own it a little, and he learned to really appreciate it and love it and whatever. But he had a real hard time with it, because I know what 4th grade Corey would have called Zenos. So if you can't even name somebody, I love my grandpa and would love to be able to honor him in a way. And we found out a way to do that with other kids. But if I can't even name my own kids Zenos because it's got a funny rhyme word to it, there ain't a chance in hell I'm naming my kid Jizzle.
Well, maybe the kid's parents were big Snoop Dogg fans. So they're like, for shizzle, it's Jizzle.
Yeah, but
it's got
you know what? No, man. No, you can't do that.
You can't. Do you think he goes by Jizzle, or do you think he makes them call him something else? Like, just call me James.
Do you think he shortens it? Is that what you're asking?
I don't think he does. Maybe his teammates do.
Did you see the jersey swap the other night?
Yes, and that I think is a good thing to end on, where they knew exactly what they were doing. Like, the one guy moved around. These two players have normal last names, but and they knew exactly what they were doing, and the cameras caught it. And the Orlando Magic put the picture out on social media of Grady Dick was one of the players. I can't remember who the other guy's name was, but they had those two guys out there. The Orlando Magic put a picture out on social media.
His last name was Black.
Yes, that's the important thing to remember. So they had their jerseys next to each other. Jazz or excuse me, the Magic put a picture out that said class of 23 with those two standing there. And somebody looked, and the next day there was a job opening to work at the social media team for the Orlando Magic. So somebody might have gotten fired.
Awesome. If you were asking me, CJ, as a quick recap, which name I like the most, I don't think I would ever name my kid Always. I don't think I would ever name my kid Jizzle. Tennessee's, I think Supreme would, if we were to like pick one that is most likely out of those four, I would, I guess, pick Supreme. I don't know. It seems a little pretentious. But Tennessee's ridiculous. I don't like Tennessee Tackman. I don't like the double T sound. It's just a little too much. It's too
Tennessee
abrasive.
Tackman sounds like the name of a country singer in like 1978. Does that make sense?
Well, that's Tennessee Ernie Ford, right? Like that's it's already been.
But like the alliteration and all that, and the
just as like an overall sound, though, Always Right is clearly the best name on this list.
Yeah. Tennessee Rainwater, though, sounds like it could be the name of a bluegrass singer in 1943.
Actually, you know what? Tennessee Rainwater does sound cool. And if your name is Tennessee Rainwater, you have to dress a certain way.
You got to play a banjo, I think.
Like if you're like, remember Johnny Flynn, all-time great, like cool sounding name. If you're Johnny Flynn and you don't have like a tailored suit everywhere you go, and you're just,
you don't have some kind of drip, you know?
Yeah, you just like Johnny Flynn's a cool sounding name. Tennessee Rainwater's a cool sounding name. They're better, you know, in like a Dutton Ranch Yellowstone kind of way.
Yeah, there's just a vibe. There's an expectation. There's responsibilities.
If your name's Tennessee Rainwater and you don't own a spittoon, get the hell out of here.
Get out of here. This has been the Morning Sports Desk for Tuesday, March 19th.